Chip Roy. Congressman, I appreciate you being here today. I also appreciate your willingness to talk about this subject. You were booked, we should acknowledge to the audience, to talk about something else today, something that I hope we get to, and that is visa overstays and the threat to Western civilization. It's important, but so is this topic, Congressman, and I appreciate your indulgence. First, let me just get your initial reaction on everything that's unfolded today between Elon Musk and President Trump.
Well, great to be on, Will, and happy to talk about any topic. These are all important to the American people, and in fact, it's all related, right? Obviously, the big, beautiful bill deals with the issue of immigration and border security, visa overstays. We saw the horrific tragedy that unfolded out in Colorado. Look, I think a couple of things are going on, and several things can be true at once. Let's remember first, Donald Trump is the president of the United States, okay? We're members of Congress, and we have an obligation to do our job. We follow the law, we pass bills, the president signs it. That's how this works. We're the ones with election certificates, and people should remember that. But Elon has points that he's making that I think we should actually take under advisement. He went out and he saw a lot of the waste, fraud, and abuse. We need to act on that. The American people were excited about that. I think Congress needs to act with dispatch. I think the big, beautiful bill has a lot of really good elements in it, enough that it got me to reluctantly vote for it when I voted for it 2 weeks ago. But I think it could be better. I think it could be better on deficit reduction. I think we could be more aggressive on spending restraint. I think we could be better on making sure we terminate the entirety of the Inflation Reduction Act. Whether the president, because that's something the president campaigned on, and whether Elon likes that or not, I think that's something we ought to do. So look, this is all unfolding in public display, as pretty much everything we do does now. But this is not actually the issue the American people care about. They care about debt, they care about taxes, they care about the economy, they care about inflation, and that's what we need to deliver on.
You know, Congressman, regrettably, my business, cable news, in fact, the news business at large is often predicated upon heroes and villains and choosing sides. There's not a side that I choose in this fight. I choose to talk about the substance, as you just have. I think that's what the American people care about. And I want to start there. We will, regrettably, have to return to the personalities because it's part of the substance. But let's talk about the bill, because that is the source of this disagreement, as you point out. It is the bill. Elon wants greater cuts. He's disappointed in the level of deficit reduction and the mounting debt for the United States. Is it possible, I mean this now, in a reconciliation bill that will only need 51 votes to get more out of Congress? Is it possible, when reconciliation is limited to mandatory cuts, mandatory spending, can you find more in Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, and the military? That's the focus of this bill.
Yeah, so let me answer that. Absolutely, we can find more, and we should. We have done some really good things in the bill. Let's be very clear. We restricted and terminated about 2/3, maybe 60% of the Inflation Reduction Act green new scam subsidies. We made Medicaid work requirements move up to 2026 to make sure they would actually apply. We applied work requirements to food stamps. We have a ban on funding of transgender surgeries for adults and children. We have a ban on money going to Planned Parenthood. We support Second Amendment rights. We have a lot of great things in the bill, and I'm proud of that. But I think it still falls short of where we could achieve it. To answer your question, if we were to fully terminate the Green New Scam, we could save another $400 billion. If we were to actually make sure that the able-bodied were no longer scamming, along with blue states, the vulnerable population on Medicaid, and it is actually waste, fraud, and abuse what's going on. I support the president on that. We could actually save another $400 or $500 billion. I can come up with $1 trillion by nightfall that we could do if Republicans had the spine to do what we said we would do to back up the president. So I think that's where we ought to go in the Senate and back to the House.
Let me follow up. You are saying something that Elon wants as well, much more aggressive cuts inside this reconciliation bill. Other discretionary cuts will come through appropriations, we've learned, and through rescission packages. But can you get more in reconciliation? And you and Elon believe the answer to that is yes. But when I ask you, can you, it's not just a matter of can you find it, Congressman, but can you get Republicans in New York and California, New Jersey to go along in the House? Can you get senators in North Dakota, Republican senators in North Dakota who have constituents that want some of these incentives when it comes to green policies to go along with you? So the measure of whether or not you can find something is not just if you can find it in the line item like Elon, whether or not you guys in Congress can convince your colleagues.
Well, I think part of convincing your colleagues is being willing to put the right thing on the floor and forcing the vote, right? And I think that's what we ought to do. I'd like to see my colleagues say that they're going to run away from the what would ultimately be a big tax increase because they're not getting to subsidize their high tax state jurisdictions like New York. I would dare them to do that. I would dare some of my colleagues to say, oh no, give me my free money to keep subsidizing unreliable energy if we were to do the right thing, which is do what the president campaigned on and terminate all of the Inflation Reduction Act. Look, again, I want to be very clear for the viewers. I'm proud of a lot of the things we've accomplished, but I'm not going to sit back and watch while we continue to have inflation, continue to have high spending, have bond markets that are reeling because we don't do our job. We can do more. I think Elon is correct, but I want to give credit. The president leaned in hard, and we got a lot of really good victories in our first round of this in the House. Now it's the Senate's job, and they need to send us an even better bill, in my opinion, and then we can move it forward. And we can find those savings if we're willing to lead.
And I want to acknowledge something that you, Stephen Miller, and others in the administration have said. The spending cuts are only 1/3 of the parts of this reconciliation bill. The other parts to focus on as well are the border protections that are baked into this reconciliation bill and the tax cuts, which need to be made permanent. But here's where we are when it comes to spending cuts, and it's about these two men now, President Trump and Elon Musk. Do you think, Congressman, this is back where we have to return to the personalities, because they're two very important figures for the future of America. Do you believe they can be brought back together?
Well, I mean, that'll be up to them. But I mean, I hope so. But importantly, look, Elon has been doing a great service to this country, exposing the ridiculous waste, fraud, and abuse. President Trump, it goes without saying, what he's sacrificed in his campaign, what he's sacrificing every day to lead into the swamp, to take on and challenge the bureaucrats and the establishment and all of the various agencies, to appoint people, from Bobby Kennedy to Pete Hegseth to others that have been taking arrows. Look, these guys are titans, and sometimes we have squabbles. I mean, Lord knows I've had a few squabbles with the White House. I've had a few squabbles with my colleagues, but we got to deliver. The American people want us to deliver. And so I'm not afraid of having this fight out in the open, because right now, look, we haven't delivered in the past. We need to deliver now. That is really what the president and Elon are both saying. And we need in Congress to step up and actually deliver the full thing that we campaigned on, which is to get to balanced budgets, which is to cut spending, eliminate waste, restore health care freedom for the American people, stop all of the ridiculous explosion of debt that is driving inflation and what is just causing massive interest rates increases.
All right. As I mentioned, we booked you on another very important topic today, and I do want to touch on that together, if we might. Sure. It is this. It is that President Trump has reinstated a travel ban on 12 countries that he considers to be high risk. Take a look at your screen right now if you're watching, and you can see some of the countries that President Trump has instituted a temporary travel ban on for various reasons, including unvetted entries, not enough security in their country, and either terrorist or cultural antagonism towards the United States of America. I thought we should point out, here is the visa overstays from those countries. We're talking a lot about visa overstays right now. In some of the countries that were just highlighted on your screen, you can see the percentage of people coming from those countries that are overstaying their visas. This, in part, Congressman, led you to saying this on the floor of the House.
51.5 million people who are foreign born in the United States. They have about 20 to 25 million kids. That puts that well over 20-something% of our population. It's the highest such number in the history of our country. People say, well, isn't that great? Is it? Are we teaching people about Western civilization? Are we teaching people about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the rule of law? Are we teaching them Western values?
Congressman, you're mentioning something there that happened in the UK. We've seen it playing out right now, by the way, in Germany. We've seen it all across Western civilization. The question is whether or not we're going to succumb here in the United States. And that is, are you going to bring people in from all over the world without assimilating them to your way of life?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of topics here, and we should have a longer segment on this because it's so important. But number one, the visa overstay issue is critical, right? Remember that the 9/11 attackers, they were all visa overstays. Remember what happened in Colorado. We had this visa overstay who was burning Jewish Americans alive, including a Holocaust survivor. This is unacceptable. But we're pointing on a bigger topic here. He's talking about the travel ban. These are countries that are not working with us to vet individuals so that we know that they can be safe and come into our country the right way, and so that we know who they are and that they are coming here for the right reasons. But at the core of the cultural issue here about the mass migration that was put on by radical progressive Democrats, Biden put it on steroids, 51 million people foreign born, that is a huge number of our population, the highest number we've ever had. We need to get recentered as a country, have a sovereign nation, have secure borders, know who we are as America, and understand that when you look at the UK and they have 6% of their population is Muslim, 10% of France is Muslim, we're at about 1%. We have a situation where Islam and, importantly, the Sharia law that certain places like that, city in Dallas, or near Plano, that, has the possibility of Sharia law being put in place is inconsistent with Western civilization. Right. We can't have that. And I'm not going to be afraid of making that point. What you saw happening in Texas, right down the road from where you are, Will, and where you grew up, they're talking about a 400-acre campus for a city where you can have Sharia law in place and keeping out non-Muslims. We can't have that in America. We need to be very clear that we are a Judeo-Christian nation, that who we are in terms of our values, our Western civilization, what the Constitution was built upon, what the Declaration represents, and make sure that we are standing strong for Western civilization throughout the world, because the world is better off because of the spread of Western civilization.
All right. Congressman Roy, you're right. It's worthy of a much deeper conversation, one we intend to continue right here at the Will Cain Show, and you're always welcome to come back and have that deeper and necessary conversation. But thank you for having the other one that is equally important today here in America. Congressman Roy, appreciate you.
Thanks, Will.
Hey, it's Will Cain. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News channel on YouTube. It's the best way to get our latest interviews and highlights. And click to subscribe to the Will Cain podcast for full episodes right now.